accused of stabbing her mother 79 times.
It's an unfortunate fact of daily life that we live amongst deadly criminals in our midst. Most tragically, it's not uncommon for these criminals to be underaged and often incapable of truly comprehending the gravity of their actions. Nevertheless, it's always something to see when they get their just punishment by the law. Here are the 4 craziest teenage convict reactions. Number 4. Dylan Schumacher. This is Dylan Schumacher. He was convicted of second-degree murder, and he was 17 years old when he received his sentence. What was the incident? The incident took place on March 19, 2013, at night, while Schumacher was babysitting Austin, his girlfriend's toddler son, and his 3-month-old brother. Austin's mother was working at a restaurant in Springville when Schumacher flew into a rage and killed the toddler by beating him to death. The toddler's death was caused by violent head whipping and frequent punching. It resulted in blood vessels rupturing in critical parts of the toddler's body, including the brain. Schumacher's conversation was also mentioned, along with the text messages he sent to his girlfriend while watching Austin and his brother. Within that conversation, texts about hooking up with a different girl and selling drugs to his friends were discovered. As you can guess, this was a troubled young boy who was not very concerned about taking care of his girlfriend's son and making sure he was fed. Schumacher admitted to hitting the toddler and slapping his face after he spat out the food. He continued by saying that the boy attempted to stand up while he was changing the boy's diaper, which led to him hitting his head on the floor. Later, out of worry that the boy's crying would wake up his young brother, he covered his head with a pillow and repeatedly punched him. What could possibly make Schumacher think that any of those actions were the right things to do? Well, his defense lawyer presented evidence of a horrible childhood experienced by Schumacher, namely an abusive and neglectful father who eventually left. Serious mental issues were also cited as part of the defense, with the argument that they interfered with his perception of reality and logic. Needless to say, the judge wasn't fully convinced, and he handed down a life sentence verdict. According to Judge M. William Buller, even at the age of 16, a person can still recognize right from wrong. He also said that Dylan Schumacher knew full well what would happen if he hit the child, which influenced his choice. Schumacher remained silent and stone-faced until he received the verdict, at which point he burst into tears and loud crying. He was reduced to crying exactly like the toddler that he killed, while pleading that he didn't mean to hurt him.
I didn't mean to kill Austin. Ashley, I really didn't. I really think I did that. I didn't mean to hurt him.
He was standing right next to his defense lawyer, and it seemed that he was looking at each of the policemen's faces, trying his best to convince them that he was truly guilty and sorry for his actions. By no means is that the most exaggerated and extreme reaction, but it's a rare sight to see someone convicted of murder break down like this in an onrush of instant guilt. An appeal at the Appellate Division of the Superior Court of New Jersey would reduce the conviction to 15 to 18 years, with the appeal judge noting that Judge Baller had failed to account for a lack of any previous criminal record and known mental health issues. Schumacher reiterated his guilt, and it seems a safe country jail for him would be best, with his lawyer successfully arguing that he was not a serial killer. Number 3. Fernando Salgado. This is Fernando Salgado. He was a student when he committed one of the gravest crimes, rape. According to the LA Times, the alleged victims are a 14-year-old boy who was assaulted on June 21st and a second boy whose age was withheld, who was allegedly assaulted on June 14th. The San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office filed documents charging De La Rosa, his teacher, and Salgado with 2 felonies each for attempted sexual penetration with a foreign object and false imprisonment, though the specifics of the crimes have not yet been made public. They would assault the other kids to basically maintain order in the classroom on their own, said Fontana Police Sergeant Robert Morris. The teacher at some point became aware of the situation and knew about what was occurring, and in one incident may have actually directed them to do it. Minor injuries were sustained by one of the victims. Morris cited the ongoing investigation when he declined to discuss the specifics of the assaults. De La Rosa's story is a different one, warranting its own video. But as for Fernando Salgado, prosecutors were unable to conclusively prove that he was responsible for sexual assault. Fernando Salgado calmly entered a not guilty plea to the 2 charges stemming from various classroom incidents at A.B. Miller High School, but he erupted when he was told that his bail had been set at $300,000 and that he would have to stay in jail until July 9, 2012.
Student facing lengthy jail sentences and a life branded as sex offenders.
"Get me away from here," Salgado yelled to his family and friends who had come to the courtroom to support him. "Get me out of here. I want to go home so bad." Aside from the shouting, he can also be seen trying to resist being taken away to detention, prompting 2 police officers to subdue him by force. More interestingly, his family and friends also disrupted the court quite heavily, shouting and screaming while asserting that he was innocent. Salgado entered a plea of guilty to 1 count of attempted sexual assault with a foreign object and 1 count of felony assault with a deadly weapon, both of which called for him to register as a sex offender. Prosecutors agreed to drop the sexual assault charge in return for his testimony, though, and that is how it went down. Salgado was out on the streets quickly enough. We still believe that he should have gone to jail and served a sentence equal to the sentence served by his teacher, as sexual assault is an unforgivable crime. Number 2, Jacob Morgan. This case is probably one of the most tragic of the ones included here. This is Jacob Morgan. After Joshua Hill, Morgan's infant half-brother, died in a fire at his Rock Hill mobile home in March of that year, Morgan, also known to friends as Matt, was taken into custody. Instead of being charged with murder, Morgan admitted to being charged with unlawful conduct toward a child and not with homicide by child abuse. The teen also pleaded to 3rd-degree arson rather than 1st-degree arson, maintaining his innocence. According to the prosecution, Morgan made a number of contradictory statements before he finally admitted to starting the fire. Fire patterns revealed 2 fires were started, and investigators testified that Morgan's explanations were inconsistent. It is my estimation both fires were set at or near potential heat sources, both of them near heaters, to disguise the fire as being accidental, said SLED investigator William Keller. Later in court, an emotional Morgan told the judge that he loved his brother and wished he could have saved him. "To kill him would be killing a piece of myself," Morgan said, upon receiving his 15 years to life sentence, with an addendum from the judge stating that he should die in jail. He completely breaks down, looking around frantically and pleading for mercy. He was crying so intensely that it was difficult for him to get any words out in a manner that was audible.
As you walk away from the fire that you just lit in another room with a small baby, walk into the front room, light that fire.
Now, what makes this story all the more tragic is that Jacob Morgan was known to be on the autism spectrum, with the proper diagnosis backing it up. Since the teenager's arrest, his family in Rock Hill, South Carolina, has supported him, and his mother, Julie Hill Dover, argued his innocence in court.
We have always believed in his innocence because we know our son.
He loved his brother. All he ever wanted was a brother. He got to enjoy his brother for 14 months, which is not long enough for any of us, but it's the tragedy, she added, according to the Herald. The kid called his mom at work, crying because one of the newborn kittens was sick, and he thought it was dying, his father said. "I'm not going to have any sheriff, any investigator tell me to my face that he's a cold-blooded killer when he cries at Disney movies." These sentiments are also backed up by his defense lawyer, who has said that it was one of the hardest cases for him to handle. It's known for a fact that autistic people, especially children, are at a disadvantage when it comes to court hearings. With prosecutors and judges incentivized by getting a conviction, it's easy for them to be manipulated under duress by policemen handling the case, especially when they come from less privileged backgrounds. Judges are also often prone to decision-making based on their mood for the day. A human with reasoning capabilities is not guaranteed to always remain fair. Number 1. Daunte Wright. We feel it's right now to follow that up with the evilest offender on this list to top it off. This is Daunte Wright. As Jordan Clee's family members read impact statements in front of the court, the teen who admitted to killing the 18-year-old Ann Arbor resident grinned and almost laughed. After the break, Daunte Wright's attorney apologized on his behalf, claiming that he had emotional problems and that some people display fear by smiling.
I've lost my only child, my son, my baby, my friend. More than that, I've lost laughter and love. I no longer have the hope of having grandchildren.
A family member read in court on behalf of the victim's grieving mother, who was unable to speak. Completely unrepentant, Daunte Wright steps onto the mic to say that he'll be home soon while smiling.
I'll be home soon. R.I.P. Keon. I love my family.
For killing Clee, Wright received a sentence of 23 to 50 years in prison. In a prior hearing, Wright acknowledged that when he shot and killed Jordan Clee, 18, the year before in October, he and 2 other friends were attempting to rob him. Of course, the judge was not content to sit and take the disrespect, and he questioned whether the sentence was too lenient by asking the prosecutors.
But watching you sit there, smile, and laugh, and shake your head like this was no big deal, I'm very tempted to just say, I'm not going to accept this sentence agreement. We'll go to trial, and if you're convicted of felony murder, you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. That means you'll die there. That's what I'm tempted to do,
said 22nd Circuit Court Judge David Swartz. It's not that uncommon to see convicts who are completely unrepentant, even as they face grieving close ones of their victims, deciding that it was the absolute right thing to just laugh in full view of them. There have been many cases of convicts taunting the family members directly as they reveal themselves and their vulnerability to the court, or even in the most extreme cases, attempt to attack them. It's not known how Daunte Wright will handle life in prison emotionally, but the fact that he was able to do this is proof that we need to address a very critical mental health crisis in societies around the world. Which of these reactions struck you most and why? Are there any other details that you would add to this video? Share it in the comments. And don't forget to like and share the video with your friends. And also subscribe to the channel and turn on your notification button so you don't miss out on our next video. See you later.